You're listening to the A Bit From Within podcast with Felicia Marty. Sometimes you just have to keep going even when things aren't ideal. Life moves on and it doesn't always wait for us to be okay again. Hello there, and thank you so much for joining me today for a new episode of the A Bit From Within podcast. My name is Felicia. For those of you who might not know me, I am a self-care specialist as well as a certified astrologer. And each week I come here to share a little bit from within with you. Every day I am hoping to help people understand that the little changes in their life can lead to really big shifts, and how sometimes just a little bit more self-awareness or thinking through things in a way that we hadn't previously given ourselves the time or space to go to can make all of the difference in how we choose to move forward. So that is what I'm here to do. And I hope that as you are settling in to listen to this week's podcast, that you're able to give yourself a nice deep breath, like I'm about to give myself right now, just nice, and maybe even a sigh out the mouth. Because I don't know about you, but lately things have been so crazy. It feels like the universal chaos has been just turned up so much, and it's a lot. So doing stuff a little bit different than normal, I thought we could start today's episode with a card drawing. We'll end with a card drawing as well. We'll use a different deck at the beginning and a different one at the end. And this one is the Affirmators Love and Relationships deck. I just feel really strongly right now that tapping into have a little bit of that universal support right now is going to go a long way for how this episode unfolds. So let's take a moment, shuffle these cards, and just see what comes up right now. Okay, so two cards were stuck together. The top one says cleansing. Feeling bogged down by the weight of 1,000 thoughts, feelings, boxes of mystery objects lurking in your closets? Consider this a prescription to clean house. Mentally, physically, literally, figuratively, and anything else that applies adverbally. It's hard to make room for new connections and experiences when every bit of your emotional space is cluttered with psychic bric-a-brac. So enjoy a major guilt-free flush out. Okay, that's our first one. I don't know about you, but that feels like it applies for me right now. And the second one is my best self. I trust that when I'm doing my best for me and the happiest version of myself, that the right sorts of relationships will appear in my life. That means that I can let go of all of my worries about the future, knowing that my only job is to be happy in this moment. Whew. Yes, I'm going to just set these right here so I can see them as I share with you guys today. Like I said, this last week has been trying. I feel like all of the Mercury retrograde vibes continue to just wreak some unnecessary havoc. Today I had all kinds of things happen. I had like a phishing link get clicked in my email inbox. I'm usually so careful with what I click on because you have to be these days because of hackers and spam and everything. But it was from Dick's Sporting Goods, and supposedly, and like it was a perfect storm. Like I had been feeling like very emotionally exhausted this morning. I've been kind of overwhelmed with all of the things on my to-do list, and I was feeling really easily distracted. And for some reason, it just happened. It never happens, and it happened today. And so that led to a large chunk of cybersecurity, kind of having to reset passwords, kind of do a whole thing just as extra precaution because you can never be too safe. And my spouse works in software, and so he knows a lot about the kind of security necessary when you do things like that. So yes, I was forced to take it very seriously, and I'm sure that I will be glad that I did, but that sucked. And another thing that I was doing is last night I was balancing all of my books for my photography business, and just like the weirdest things were happening. Like the dates were all weird for certain things that were being saved, or clients' names were getting mixed up when like the names aren't even that close, but like the deposits were saved into each other's files, and this had happened like prior. I'm like trying to get it all sorted out, and I was just, one, I was probably should not be balancing my books in the middle of a Mercury retrograde, but two, probably shouldn't have been doing it like 11:30 at night, but that is the life sometimes. Sometimes you just have to keep going even when things aren't ideal. But isn't that just life sometimes? Like, there are certain times when we probably just shouldn't be tackling certain things because we are stressed, or we are tired, or we are going through something else, or it's just not the right timing. But sometimes those things can't wait for us, or we just have to address them. And so we do the best we can, and we try our best to keep going forward. And I feel like this happens to us a lot, especially when we are exhausted, especially emotionally exhausted. You know, with physical exhaustion, it's like you kind of know it's coming, right? Because like maybe you put in like a really long day of gardening, or maybe you're going to run a marathon, or maybe you are taking some dance classes, or shooting a wedding out in the hot sun. Like, you know, the physical exhaustion is coming. Maybe you've been up really early, you didn't get a good night's sleep before. Like, you are a lot more aware of your physical tiredness. And I also think that being physically tired, well, especially when you've done something to be physically tired, I'm kind of saying this with quotes, is like it's a lot more acceptable to other people. Being physically tired when you haven't been doing a lot physically, people are more apt to judge you for that, although it is a very real. And I think that kind of tiredness also comes with the slew of other kind of exhaustions that we go through. Being emotionally exhausted, being mentally exhausted, being spiritually exhausted. There are so many different ways that we can just get tired. And not everybody can hold space or understand those things. And oftentimes, when you are mentally or emotionally or the various other kinds of tired, people don't make exceptions for you, and you often feel the pressure, you as in all of us, feel the pressure to keep going even when we're in that space. So how often have you like shown up at work after like a big fight with your spouse, and your eyes are all puffy, and maybe you took some time to like ice them that morning or try to put your like eye cream on it, and you're just shot. Like, your boss is like, hey, we need to talk about blah, blah. And you're like, I have no ideas. I have no energy. Like, I am spent. And I hope that you're not going to try to confront me right now, because even if you do, I've got nothing left to give. That right there is emotional exhaustion. And of course, yes, relationship struggles definitely can make you just emotionally spent. But there's so many things that so many of us are dealing with that should be leaving us emotionally spent, like dealing with health issues, dealing with financial issues, or going through a really big loss in life, the anniversary of the losses of our lives, being like dissatisfied with your job or your home environment, right? Going through chronic illness or dealing with injury, caretaking for other people, you know, in general, just not having control over what you're dealing with, which usually does revolve around some kind of loss or some kind of, even if it's not a loss of a person, but like loss of health, or being in a situation where you really need it to go one way and it feels like it's going the exact opposite direction, which usually leads to those feelings of being dissatisfied or having trouble. And so, you know, we all know that we are not guaranteed a life that is always 100% peaceful, right? Like, that is not the path for most of us. And one thing I find fascinating is that, you can look at any kind of person. Like you can look at the poor, you can look at the ultra rich, you can look at royalty, you can look at the middle class, you could look at college students or senior citizens or everybody in between, parents, teenagers, everybody. There is not one person that you couldn't zoom into their life and say that person is 100% free of any problems. Now, of course, there are some very spiritual beings who have done a lot of work, who choose to look at life in a different way, and things shift for them. But most of us, the majority of people, are going to encounter life lessons. We're going to experience hardship and struggle, and we're definitely going to experience emotional exhaustion. And so what do we do during these times? Like, how do we make space inside of ourselves to get through it? Because, like I mentioned before, life has to go on. You have to hop on that meeting or show up to that job or take the class or have dinner with the extended family. Life moves on, and it doesn't always wait for us to be okay again. And, so some of the things that we can do are things that, will make a difference publicly. But a lot of what happens is what's happening on the inside of us and how good we are at genuinely taking care of ourselves. And the only place we can begin that journey is by making it a priority, which can be really, really difficult. Especially if you feel like the only way that you're going to be able to play a little bit of catch up inside of yourself is by taking a break or by getting some space. You may not feel like that's even possible. You might not be able to take a vacation or get away for a little while. You might have to endure the situation that you're in. But can you give yourself a break in the downtime that you do have? This is a really good question that you have to begin to ask yourself. What kind of space do I need? How could I take advantage of some of the time that I don't have to be on right now? Can I cancel some other appointments? Can I hire out some errands to be done? Of course, that's a very privileged question to ask. Or is there somebody I can ask for help from? Can I offer a trade? I try to always think of ways that can be applicable or in all situations. And I do think that sometimes you have to get a little creative with that. Now, one of the things that I am a huge advocate for when I work with clients on different kind of self-care routines is really emphasizing the fact that we don't always have endless amounts of time to take care of ourselves in, right? Not every one of us has a full day off every single week where we're not responsible for other things going on, or where we have the funds to just go out and treat ourselves until we're rejuvenated. And sometimes we are so depleted that even when we go to rejuvenate ourselves, it feels like we're only collecting like little drops in our bucket. But a little bit does go a long way, and a lot of it begins with our expectations. And some of this has to do with how we kind of pre-frame things in our mind. So if we think, gosh, I'm just exhausted right now, these are silly examples, but I think they're also common ones. I just need to get like a treat. Like I'm going to go buy a donut, or I'm going to go get myself a pedicure. And then you just kind of go through the motions of doing those things, and then you get done with them and you don't feel any differently. One, I think sometimes this just happens to us, but two, sometimes it's because we didn't allow ourselves to be fully present in that moment. You have to move with intention. So you could make that trip to go get a donut one where you were doing deep breathing, and then you sat in your car and you listened to some music while you ate your donut, and You knew that this was your time to decompress. And so because you were committed to the process, that happened. Same thing with a pedicure, right? Like you can say, I'm going to go and treat myself. And when I'm sitting in the chair, I'm going to feel the like rollers on my back. I'm going to really feel my feet soaking. I'm going to allow my shoulders to come down. I'm going to close my eyes. I'm going to just zone out for a little while, knowing that this time where I get to be getting a pedicure means that I don't have to be somewhere else right now solving something. And this is good for me. You are more apt to leave that appointment feeling like, okay, I did something for myself. And this could apply to literally all things. One of the things that I was just thinking about is how many times in my yoga practice do I show up on my mat, and sometimes, not very often, but it has happened where I am just a little bit too focused on other things. So even though I'm going through the physical practice of showing up on my mat and doing the postures, I am mentally somewhere else. I am solving something. I am ready to move on. And when I leave that, I don't feel like I gained any kind of peace, any kind of maybe a little bit of exercise, but mostly I don't feel what I come to the yoga mat for, which has a lot more to do with connecting with myself, connecting with my highest power, connecting with my breath, and being present in the moment, not thinking about other things, not solving other things, not trying to go other places in my mind or deal with other things, but trying just to be right there. And I will also say that there are plenty of times where I have solved things on my yoga mat, but it wasn't because I went there to solve it. It's because I went there to be present. And I think that's something that many people who are very interested in trying and working with practicing mindfulness techniques get to experience, because sometimes when you're not looking for it, that's when the answers happen or when they come to you. Now, all of that being said, I can't talk about answers without also, the disclaimer that we all know that answers don't come when we want them. They come when they're supposed to happen. And now, this is funny that this is coming up right now, because honestly, I have been really struggling with and feeling a lot of resistance around the transition in my life of going from a full-time wedding photographer to being a little bit more of a entrepreneur who does kinds of photography and astrology and self-care specialist and podcaster and, just finding different ways of connecting with people and making a living doing that. And this is a really scary transition, because when you've always made money doing one thing, taking that leap into something new is scary. Or at least I'm feeling really scared about it. And there's a part of me that just wants answers. It's like, well, what should I call myself? Or what should I do? Or what's going to bring in the money? What's next? And the truth is, there is no time to think about that right now, because as of right now, I am still a full-time wedding photographer. I've got so many weddings that have happened this month. This weekend in particular, we had 2 big back-to-back photo and video wedding weekends with the full team, which are so much fun, but they take a lot of work, a lot of coordination, and it's still happening. Like September and October are crazy popular wedding months in Colorado. And so as much as I feel like my focus needs to be shifting outward, it's not possible. And honestly, it's making me feel really emotionally exhausted. It's not the only thing, because that's how it always happens. It's never, well, not never, but it's usually not just one thing, because one thing affects another thing in our lives. And so when we get to that point where we are emotionally exhausted, it's because there's so many things happening. And on top of it, the world feels slow right now. And as I look to the stars as an astrologer, I see very clearly that we are meant to slow down right now, that the things that are happening right now are lessons that we need to learn from a more steady place, a place of being rooted and a place of careful consideration. And when we are going too fast, or we are moving through life a little bit more haphazardly, we can't do those things. And so it takes an incredible amount of conscious effort, and it takes a lot of intentionality, some of which it just doesn't feel like there's space for. So even as you hear me tell you, like, make time for yourself, prioritize your well-being, give yourself space to have those little things, even if it's just a 5-minute moment that you can reset, make those moments for yourself. Know that even while I'm encouraging that, like, I struggle with taking those for myself too, because it is so much easier to go, and to keep our minds busy and occupied and being preoccupied with what is expected of us and how we can show up and keep, checklisting our way through it. It's almost like playing a video game, right? It's like, okay, well, you're constantly keeping tabs on what you've already collected, what missions you've completed, and what's next in order to win. It's like we have this idea that, like, okay, there's an end goal. And this is just that reminder that there is no end goal. Like, yes, things do come to an end and new things begin. But in the midst of all of that is our everyday lives. And so we do need these moments to hit the reset button, or at least the pause button, even if we can't do it for an entire week or an entire weekend or an entire day. We can hit it for a second while we take ourselves outside of our house or into the closet or into a separate bedroom or into our cars. We can let our shoulders lift up towards our ears. We can feel all that we're feeling. And on the exhale, we can let it go. We can soften the shoulders. We can close down the eyes, and we can have a moment of surrender. As though we were putting our hands up in the air and just saying, like, I don't know. I don't have the answers right now. I feel out of control in my life. There are things I wish felt more solid that just don't feel solid right now. And I hope God, universe, divine, anybody with a master plan out there, like, I hope that you have a plan. And I hope that things shift and that soon I'm feeling a lot more, fill in the blank, a lot more rooted, a lot more secure, a lot more confident in what's ahead. Whatever that is for you. And now I know we're doing things a little bit backwards right now, because normally we do the card drawing just at the end, and we do an astrological check-in at the beginning, our little astro check-in. But I think it's a good time to, now that I've kind of shared what's been on my mind with you guys, maybe it's time to thread in some of the astrology coming up, because it's all part of us breathing into any emotional balance we might need to find right now. This week is the autumn equinox. So the day where light and dark is 50-50, and it's our transition into fall, which in the Northern Hemisphere, this is the entrance into darker days, into things changing, into things moving towards death and dying. Or periods of retreat, like nature gets to go on an extended vacation as it moves dormant. And so this is a time for us too to look at ourselves. And astrologically, when the autumn equinox happens, the sun is moving into the sign of Libra. Libra is also a sign of balance, but it's also a sign of partnership. And not just, partnerships is through relationships, like with a spouse, but truly, this could be any kind of one-on-one relationship, because it's more about being in relationship, where we're not just focused on ourselves anymore and what matters to us. We start to understand that we are part of a bigger picture. We're part of a team, and that the needs and wants and opinions and thoughts of others impact us too. So this is why there's also themes of negotiation and finding harmony and taking into account things like beauty, right? Because it's not just about what matters to us, but it's about things also feeling nice for other people to enjoy, for us to appreciate, for us to feel like needs are being met, and not just survival needs, but also the needs outside of ourselves, which do include ambiance. As funny as that sounds, it's a very big part of the Libra environment. So as we move into fall, this is a good time for us to think about how we are viewing ourselves, or how we're showing up as ourself in relationship with other people. And this is a great time to look at this, and it's also a tricky time to look at this because we started the Mercury retrograde a couple weeks ago in the sign of Libra. And so there has been a little bit of a flashlight on this sign and on the relationships in our life. Sometimes we can experience this by feeling like really connected to our loved ones. But it also wouldn't be, uncommon right now if you're feeling a lot of struggle with the people that you love in your life. And this, it's funny because this kind of connects back to my earlier point that, we're not guaranteed easy relationships, just like we're not guaranteed a life without things that exhaust us, right? Relationships can be tricky, they can be trying. And sometimes, especially the more that we misunderstand each other or we are on different pages, the harder it can be to find our way back to that feeling of negotiation or peacefulness or harmony. And the answer, even though we don't always want this to be the answer, we want whatever is easiest. We want the least painful option. But sometimes that is not what is meant for us. Sometimes we have to sit in the discomfort, and we have to sit in the pain of relationships changing, just like we have to sit through the seasons of fall into winter, right? Of course, this happens on a most of the time I would say it happens on a much shorter scale than it actually does time-wise for the seasons. But sometimes you do go through those little periods where there's like a little bit of a grieving process, and things, sometimes maybe not through the little fights, but some of the bigger fights that you might have with others, they might feel a little bit like the season's changing, like the other person has characteristics that they have to eventually say goodbye to and morph into new things. Sometimes there's a period of that gap that feels a lot like winter, that just nothing is happening and things feel really stagnant, and you wonder, is spring ever going to come again? Is there ever going to be new life here? And I share this because we don't like to talk about it. We don't like to talk about how fearful it could be to be facing that thing in your life that you're wondering, will I ever get this back? Or will this be okay? Or what's the path forward here? Sometimes we don't know it with that person. Sometimes we don't know it for ourselves. And so as we move into this fall season, I think that it is important that we allow ourselves to think about all of those things, and even some of the things that kind of scare us. I say this especially because with all of the planets that are retrograde right now, especially Mercury, this is a good time to look back and find something that wasn't there the first time. So you can tell, this is a lot. It's a lot going on. And if anything, what I wish that fall would actually do for us is give ourselves, during fall time, permission to slow down. Now, if you've been following me for a while, you know that I'm always talking about slowing down. And when I say slow down, I definitely don't mean slow down in areas that are going well for you or that you have a lot of momentum in. But I do mean allow yourself to slow down in the areas that you're fighting against. Maybe that's a really good clarification to make. Slowing down in the areas where we're finding a lot of resistance means that it's almost like we're making space to look it in the eye. And instead of saying, I'm trying to avoid you, or I'm trying to silence you, or I'm trying to keep going and ignore you, instead, I'm here, I'm looking at it. What do we need to do to move forward? And what am I missing? Sometimes when we're going so fast, it's like we can't remember there are things that need to come on board, whether it's insight or maybe it's tools to support ourselves. Maybe it's the support of others. So often we throw things on our own backs and we only talk about it with those, very few people in our select inner circle. And we forget that there are so many people that we are connected to in our life that could provide a little bit of that extra inspiration or encouragement when we need it. So as we move into this final week of the lunar cycle, as we move towards the autumn equinox, as we approach this Libra new moon that is coming on Sunday, September 25th, I encourage you to take a little bit of time to consider what are the things that you might be missing, or in what ways can you even ask for help or invite more support into your life. And this is a really beautiful way to kind of work intentionally without necessarily setting an intention, or at least not having like a big manifestation process, because you can set intentions all the time. Like I guess what I mean by that is more of like a manifestation moment. You can set an intention at any point of any day, but we do have to be careful when we're really working on manifesting that we're doing so when times are a little bit more favorable. And I will say that with Mercury in retrograde and the energy that's kind of been floating through the universe, like this upcoming new moon may not be the best one to set big manifestation kind of intentions or manifestation practices. This one might be nice, like I said, to ask yourself some questions and answer those questions for yourself, and then work on living those or finding what you're inviting in. This is maybe a little bit of rough news if you've been trying to gain a lot of momentum, because the next new moon is also going to be a little bit of a trickier one, because we're going to be entering into eclipse season during the October new moon. So again, this kind of goes with this entire vibe that I think a lot of us are feeling right now, which is like, I want to get ahead, but nothing feels like the right time. Or I don't want to get ahead right now. Everything feels like it's way too much and overwhelming, and I just need a break. So whether you like it or not, this is still a good time to just sit with what is, to work on yourself. Honestly, it goes back to those two cards that we pulled at the beginning of this episode on cleansing, giving ourselves that guilt-free moment just to clean out the closet and keep working on refining ourselves. And, of course, being your best self, working on being happy in this moment. What are those things in your life that when you're you can focus on being present? How can you find your happiness there? And then kind of it'll ricochet and it'll work its way outward. So there it is. I told you we'd do one more card drawing at the end of today's episode, and everyone loves these animal cards. This is from the Wild Unknown Animal Spirit deck. So let's pull an animal, one that can kind of be a symbol for us throughout the week ahead. The black egg. The black egg contains one of life's essential treasures, the truth. Inside of it resides no confusion, no excuses, no small talk, no noise or lies, not even white ones. This living and breathing vessel harbors only that which rings true. When this essence is in balance, we speak slowly and clearly. We are drawn to activities like writing, reading, teaching, singing, or perhaps public speaking. Sound draws us in. Books draw us in. The concept of truth draws us in. We start asking questions like, what do I know to be true about myself? And what is true about the world? When the black egg is not yet accessed, we speak from an unsure place. We say things that others want to hear, gossip, or repeat stories to justify our subpar behavior. We might even try to convince ourselves that we have no inner truth at all. The energy of the black egg hovers and waits for us to reconnect. It is available at every moment, in every situation. It is the epicenter of truth, the birthplace of our voice. And for my yogis out there, the black egg is also connected to the 5th chakra, which is our throat chakra. So remembering that this connects with our speech center, our expression, our ability to talk, but also our ability to listen. And so something to pay attention to this week as you move ahead, maybe incorporating some throat chakra into our yoga practice this week. As we come here to a close, I just want to say thank you for tuning in today. You know, it's been interesting because, and this is just a side note, but in the last 2 weeks on TikTok, I've gained a little amount of attraction, and I've gained like maybe 700 followers in the past week or so. And it's made me think about just how many people can hear you speak and how important it is what you're saying. And, you know, a medium like the podcast, it is so epic because it can go out there and maybe reach one person, or it could reach 500 people, or it could reach 1 million people. My podcast has never done that. But honestly, the more that I, kind of gain momentum, and that is something that I need and want to connect with other people, especially like-minded people. Just to be honest, the more it makes me love and appreciate the moment where I know that just one person is receiving this and that it has meant something to them, to witness this moment, to hear these rambling kind of scattered thoughts, at least at this point. I know that for me right now that I am being my best self, and it's hard when we feel like our best self isn't so eloquent or isn't so focused or isn't so, having this clear topic in front of them. Like, I feel a lot of pressure to be those things, and yet I know that I can't show up like that right now. So I have to show up instead with what I do have, which is my heart and my authenticity and a little bit of my rawness. So all that is just to say, this moment of you listening right now really does mean the world to me, and it means more than I can really say. So thank you. Thank you for tuning in. Be sure to stay connected with all things a bit from within. We should have a new lunar guide coming out later this week for the Libra new moon. Lots of good information on that. We have a live class this Sunday on the through the Patreon page. So if you want to attend our Gentle Live Yoga Connect class, I would love to have you there, and I can't wait to connect with you then. So mark your calendars for that. All right, that is it. Sending you so much love, and until next time.